we're zero waste. That's half of our mission. Our mission is to rehome pre-loved items to reduce waste and raise money for kids, right? Essentially, the fashion industry has evolved so much, super fast. And now fast fashion is taking over. And the problem with fast fashion, there's a lot of pressure on these brands to mass produce clothing for the cheapest price possible. And they're compromising. They're compromising on the quality. Things are built to fall apart.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Diaries. Today we have an amazing guest. Her name's Jennifer, the founder of Thrift for Good. Hi Jennifer, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks. I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Jennifer, before we've done the research, but I think, can you tell us what you exactly do at Thrift for Good?
So I'm the founder and managing director of Thrift for Good. Thrift for Good are charitable pre-loved clothing stores here in Dubai. We currently have 2 branches. We're gearing up to open our 3rd one in December, which is really exciting. And essentially the concept is anyone can bring what they wear or read, donate it to us, and we resell. We raise money. We donate 100% of our profits to support children around the world. And we are the only zero waste place to bring clothing in the UAE. So we're very excited to be here, changing the fashion industry, making it all more sustainable and charitable.
What do you mean by pre-loved clothes? Because that seems like a fancy term for used clothes, right?
Yes, that's it, exactly. So used clothes or things that, all of us have stuff in our wardrobe that's still new with tags. Technically pre-loved, even though it's never been worn. But we take from completely damaged to perfectly new, we'll take it.
And how do you take care of the segregation between like the very damaged to pretty new?
So,
is that a process that takes a lot of time and effort?
Yes, absolutely. So it all begins with sorting of these contributions. So what we'll do is that anything that's perfect quality, we'll put it out into store, we'll steam it, price it, merchandise it, sell it. But we're zero waste. That's half of our mission. Our mission is to rehome pre-loved items to reduce waste and raise money for kids, right? So that's where the magic happens when it's not perfect. We do everything that we can in-house and through sponsors, Champion Cleaner, Washman, to wash, stain treat, to repair the clothes. If it's missing a button, we'll sew it back in. If they're dirty runners, we'll wash them. If it's something that we can't repair, but we can still sell, we have Dara Night Market. We have an outlet there where we can sell clothes by the kg or just very cheap and reasonable. It might be the most awesome Adidas shirt. It's just faded. So we'll sell it at a good price there. And the things that we can't sell but are still usable, we donate locally to labor camps in partnership with Serve the City. We're also doing an initiative. I'm not sure how 100% legal it is to say, but we do contribute to help people in Lebanon and things like that as well. And then if it's no longer usable, we're in partnership with Kiswa, and we send those materials to India to recycle into carpet and furniture. But we're looking at and working on really cool initiatives locally to recycle it here, which is really exciting.
And speaking of the clothes that you merchandise and sell, right?
Yeah.
Who are the typical target customers for clothes like these?
Oh man, everyone. So our youngest customers, we have Baby Bazaar, we sell kids clothing. So our youngest customer is probably like 2 years old. And we have customers in their 80s. It's men, women. The majority of what we receive that's sellable is women's clothing. So our audience is probably 90% female, but we're looking to get more men's clothing so we can reach out more to guys. And every demographic walks through our doors.
Is there a reason why the population's mostly female other than men?
I don't want to stereotype. Men are much more sustainable with their clothing, it seems. So we get a lot of clothing from men, but they'll use those clothes until the end of their life. So what we actually get that's store worthy is very minimal. And most of it we're like, okay, we're donating this, we're upcycling this, we're doing cool things.
Because my understanding is like when I buy clothes, like typically if I'm buying a shirt and a suit, for example, it just goes on forever and ever and ever.
Yeah,
right?
You use it until it's done, which is like the idea of fashion.
But which I don't see with women's clothing. They buy clothes for certain occasions, and you can't really reuse that into other things, right? So for example, if I buy a suit, like a blazer and pants and shirt, I can just remove the blazer and wear it as workwear.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not necessarily the case with dresses and other things, right?
Yeah. And I think the way the world's going, there's so much pressure on women to change our style, to change our clothing, to never go to an event, like the same event in the same outfit, if that makes sense. So, and it is like shopping for so many is a hobby. It's something enjoyable to rotate your wardrobe, dress differently based on how you feel or as you go through life. So secondhand's a great option because it's still sustainable. It lets those clothes last until the end of their life, but in different homes, different wardrobes. So it's more like renting the outfit than, buying it and keeping it for 20 years.
Yeah, that's a fair perspective. Because I buy, okay, now this is a probably a controversial point to bring it up to you.
Yeah,
right?
let's talk
But I'm
about
an
it.
exclusively buy new things sort of a person.
Okay.
Right. And every time I look about thrift, like I've been to like thrift stores and everything, and I'm like, these are worn by somebody else. I don't know how comfortable I feel about that. Right. Like if I come to you and ask you to convince me to thrift rather than buy new things, what would your pitch be?
There is a stigma in the UAE, but we are here to challenge it. So would you borrow, do you have a brother?
Sure. Yeah.
Would you borrow his blazer?
He's small, brother. So.
Oh,
not
okay.
really.
So if it fit, would you borrow it?
Yeah.
So if it's clean, it's perfect quality, like the clothing is fine. What's the difference between your brother and your neighbor?
I would say it's a little bit of difference, right? Like that's my brother versus it's not even my neighbor. I don't know who it's coming from, where it's coming from.
But there's nothing wrong with the item. And the thing is, too, the benefits of sustainability. Maybe we need to look into that because I think if people knew the problems in the fashion industry, we would all stop buying new unless it was sustainable. Is it okay if I go into that tangent?
Go for it. Let's go.
Great. So essentially, the fashion industry has evolved so much, super fast. And now fast fashion is taking over. And the problem with fast fashion, there's a lot of pressure on these brands to mass produce clothing for the cheapest price possible. And they're compromising. They're compromising on the quality. Things are built to fall apart.
Yeah.
They're compromising on the materials. A lot of what you're buying now is polyester blends, all of these things, which are causing drastic environmental impact. For example, the polyesters, microplastic fibers go into our ocean. It's a massive problem. 30% of that comes from fashion. There's a study where 70% of breast milk in the US has plastic in it. Also, they're using dyes and cohesives that contain mercury, lead, like crazy chemicals we absorb through our skin. You know, when you're buying that material, like, what are you doing to your health? There's the carbon emissions, the waters used, the pesticides, and then we get to the human problem where people, because they're looking so cheap, there's people working 12 to 16-hour days for less than 10 dirhams per day.
Sweatshops and all these
Sweatshops, horrible conditions, slave labor, really. And a lot of that workforce is child labor.
Yeah.
Fashion is the second biggest industry just next to coffee production for child labor. So, like, okay, I can walk into, I'm not going to name the brand, but any fast fashion brand, your favorite, and I could buy something for 7 times the price of what I need to spend to fuel child labor, cancer, environmental crisis. Or I can go and for something a seventh of the price, invest in sustainability, something that's better for my health, and also will fund children's charity projects. So a stigma is a stigma. When you actually look at the logic behind it, I challenge you to do that because it's based on like maybe a cultural perception or something, but the product is just as good and even better in ways because you're going to find unique styles. The price is so accessible. You can try new things without feeling guilty. And then you're getting so much more value for your money. You're able to fund sustainability and kids and, and take care of the planet in a much better way. I don't know if that helps.
It helps quite a bit, right? Like, so another thing is that I do buy things a lot from Brands for Less, for example.
Yeah.
You know, the pieces that don't
That's
sell
cool.
out
Yeah.
and everything. And it gives me the kooky, crazy styles. Like I have Legos on my shoe sort of a situation.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It just comes to a point that, hey, I don't know where the clothes been. Like, even though if it's pressed, cleaned, steamed, there's just that mental block. I know in reality, like if I logically think about it, doesn't make a difference, right? It's just, right? It's even if it's coming from the factory, it's not the cleanest product you could find.
Yeah, actually, I recommend like if you buy it and you wash that stuff because it's been tried on a million times. It's been through everything. The chemicals are still hanging
just on the retail store, right? Just how many people have worn it and tried it and it's not clean, so you end up washing it all over again. And we don't really put a thought into how good the cleaning products really are. They do clean quite a bit well.
Yeah.
So, but there is still this mental block that says, hey, I don't know where the clothes from. I don't know where it is from. What if I'm paying too much for used clothes? Right? There are all these stigmas, right? And how does one look past that stigma? What is that one pushing factor that you would say that, hey, these are fair concerns, but the benefits outweigh.
Yeah. So I guess in our store, we've given comfort that we only put perfect quality. So you're not going to be dealing with nasty stains and like condition problems. It's going to be as good as new.
Okay.
And the price point is also a great thing. Like if nothing else, you can save a ton of money. Nobody's going to know it's secondhand. And we do like with Dubai and the pressure to change up wardrobes, if you only want new with tag, okay, cool. You can still come to us because you'll find that.
How did it start up? What was your spark that, hey, this is a gap that I'm seeing and I want to fix this?
It kind of presented itself to me and I was lucky to say yes. So my background is in fundraising for children's charity projects. It's a passion I've developed since I was a kid.
Yep, 14 years old if our research is correct.
Oh my God, you guys have done your homework. Awesome. Yeah, and it's something that became a part of me and has fueled me and all of this. And I was lucky in my last job with Golf for Good. We're fundraising for children's charity projects. And people would call up on the phone almost every single day saying, we have this stuff we want to give you and we want to come and volunteer. Golf for Good does great work through life-changing adventure challenges. So people will sign up, train to climb Kilimanjaro or another awesome thing, raise the funds, go climb the mountain, meet the kids that are involved. It's a very life-changing thing, but I had no room for clothes or volunteers. So me and some friends, we started saying yes. We started selling them at flea market and we started raising additional funds for these kids. And the amount of clothing was what was eye-opening. I'm an avid thrifter. I grew up in Canada. I grew up wearing my brother's clothes. And this is just what we did in our childhood. And the fact it didn't exist here, it was a gap for me personally. And then when we started reselling these clothes, we found it was a gap for so many people that wanted to find pre-loved, that wanted to find sustainable, that wanted to find accessible, sustainable options. So it just grew and grew and grew and grew. I got to a point where every wall in my house was covered with clothing, every drawer, everything for resale, because there isn't an appropriate channel here yet to be able to give these clothes away. And my partner looked at me one day and said, Jen, you either have to stop doing this or you have to really do it. So that's when luckily we said yes, got sponsored storage, and we started organizing with volunteers to make it a regular thing. And it just took off in a way I never imagined.
And the Thrift for Good is run as a non-profit, right?
Yes.
And as a non-profit, and it says 100% of the profits go to other charitable contribution. What was the incentive for it to be a non-charitable initiative rather than a for-profit company, considering that, hey, the supply is abundant, the demand is abundant, right? There is a good opportunity to be a for-profit company, right? What was that spark to be a non-profit?
If it was for-profit, I'd have no interest in it.
Okay.
The reason I get out of bed in the morning is to raise money for those kids. I don't know if you came across this story. I don't tell it often, but I'll tell you guys. So after high school, I volunteered in Nepal. I was there for 5-6 months. So I was in Nepal and I was all naive and keen and I just wanted to help kids and get some life experience. And I found myself in a children's home with 50 of the most beautiful souls, 3 till 12 years old. But I learned very quickly that the guy that was taking them in, they had parents. Outside of Kathmandu Valley, the parents would give this guy money to take them to the valley to give them a good education.
Okay.
The problem with that is he wasn't. 18-year-olds who knew nothing about the world were teaching them in a field, if that. We spent most of the time playing. The food was horrible, and there were 4 kids to a bed. They had health conditions. That's what most of my time was dealing with. But what really changed my life forever is when I went back a couple years later. I was really lucky to go back. I wanted to see those kids, and I couldn't find them. I was looking for them. I couldn't find them. I went to the host family that I was staying with, and when I asked them, hey, where did this children's home go? Where did those kids go? They said, Jen, we think they were sold. And in Nepal, a child being sold, that means sex trafficking. That means early labor. That means just things that still keep me up at night. I could never find those kids, but it was in that phase of my life where I said, okay, whatever I do in this life, I do that to help children. Anything else doesn't matter. I don't want the fancy car. I don't want the whatever. I want to have a life of purpose. And I'm so glad that there's so many people that also want to give back, that want to do things. And Thrift for Good has made it possible for so many people to be involved in great ways through little actions, through little things. So for me, taking profit, it'd be why? The sustainability, yes, and other great pre-loved clothing stores are doing that. But for me, the reason we do this is to raise money for the kids. And that's why we donate 100% of the profits.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
And do you think, I'm fairly certain, right, whatever you do, whatever Thrift for Good does, it's contributing to solving a fraction of the large problem that exists, right? Do you ever think that this large problem, whether it be children's being sold or any of these things, to be actually solved in our lifetime, or do you?
I really hope so. Yeah, because it's unfathomable to think of a child being sold.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of all the human rights abuses, that for me is number one. And I think it is possible with law, with bigger changes than I can probably do in this life. But at least from our side, if we can, Mother Teresa has a quote, if you can't feed 100, just feed one. If we can save 100 kids, 1,000 kids, if we can reach just a few more to save them from that fate, I think that's, life well lived. It's work well done.
because I come from like a very nihilistic background. Like when I hear things, like this seems a little impossible challenge because there's so many structural problems, fundamental problems that are systemic in nature. And the question is, how do you even begin? Where do you begin from? What do you do? Right? And even if I begin and start doing, am I really, what the contribution is probably less than 1% of the total problem. Right? So is it ever going to be solved? And I always end up looping back to, this is a problem that's kind of out of your hand. Like this is just, that's almost always the conclusion I round up to, because it just feels like the problem is huge. And I feel like I'm in a very privileged space to be like, yeah, maybe I can solve this problem sort of a place, right? And does that thought process ever occur to you? Or do you just like break out and you're like, no, I can do this sort of a...
Well, I think it's both sides. Like I have faced, I mean, that charity was an example of a bad charity, right? The issues have come up where it's like, okay, how do we do this in the best way? I mean, I've been working with charities now for 20 years. There are projects we invested in where we built a home and then they didn't actually own the land and they moved and they lost their home. You know, so you learn as you go how to make every dirham count in the most effective ways. So now I'm really like, the process we have is good. It's really reaching kids. And I mean, okay, we can't probably change the problem. But if us and so many others work on it together and we do our part, it has to change. It will change. Like, and that even if it's not possible in this lifetime, at least the kids that we're helping, like, man, if you can change the life for one child, why not?
I have a counter argument for that.
Okay.
Okay. Let's maybe move from a very dire situation such as children being sold. Let's just move back to sustainable clothing, right?
Should we pull out one of these water bottles? Yeah. That's a great example.
It's one of the greatest example, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I know for a fact that if I just use a reusable flask, it's probably good for the environment.
I guess we even got the branding on it. Yeah. Okay.
I know that for a fact. But then I'm thinking about, hey, the bottle's going to cost me 1 dirham.
Okay.
Do I have to really pick up the bottle, carry it, just on a pure convenience, lazy level? I'm not going to do it. Like, it's just 1 dirham.
How many water bottles would you say you use in a year?
Let's say give or take 2-3 bottles a day.
So that's like 800 bottles a year, give or take?
Give or take.
How much space in landfill do you think that takes?
Quite a lot.
And 400 years that takes to biodegrade. That's your impact every single year of your life.
The math makes perfect sense. But if I'm thinking about, hey, if I'm lazy, I'm going to assume that a good portion of the population is lazy. So let's say I save up 800 bottles a day, but what are the chances that everybody around me or even 10% of the population around me is going to change with me? And on a pure intuition, I just think not many are going to, right? So yes, you make a very small pinch of contribution into that bigger problem all over again, and hence the nihilism over it.
Yeah, but who cares what somebody else does? Your impact, your footprint, your life. It's a difference. So I'm going to give you a few quotes. I hope you don't mind. But there's another one. It's a great one. I forget who says it. The world doesn't need all of us to do zero waste perfectly. It needs millions of us to do it imperfectly. Meaning just changing small life choices to make ourselves more sustainable. That's it. And if it's easy as carrying around like a super light water bottle, it means you'll drink more water. Like, I don't know if that's been sitting in the sun and it's absorbed all these like toxins from the plastic. And it's easy. It's really easy. It's a small change that can make such a world of difference in time.
I think the nihilism stems from the fact that, is my contribution too little? That's probably where it is. But when you put it in the fact that it doesn't matter, that kind of adds up. Which kind of leads me into the other side of the things, right? Like if I'm thinking about a good example is, the supermarkets right now, they charge you 25 fils per bag.
Yeah.
And I get where it's coming from. Hey, you use less plastic bags. That's good. That's great. But you take a reusable carrying bag to the supermarket, all good and dandy. But what I end up putting in the reusable bag is ultimately plastic bags that are packaging other things. So I buy vegetables, that's going inside plastic bags. The food items I'm buying, mostly plastic bags or plastic bottles. All of them are going in. So in the grand scheme of things, yes, I'm saving 25 fils a bag and I'm using a reusable bag. But it doesn't really contribute much because all my tomatoes and potatoes are in plastic bags at the end of the day.
Yeah, the grocery stores also have these awesome reusable bags. Like I know I use that. So you can get these like little fabric bags, machine washable, that you can just use for your fruits and veg and all of these things. So you can cut down plastic. It can also be argued that the more of us that want plastic-free options, the more you invest in those, the superstores, the grocery stores will respond to that demand and provide more options. Like I know Carrefour has bulk bins. Like you can bring your own jar, free container, and fill it with your nuts or whatever. And again, like it's just, we can't be perfect. Every now and again, I use a plastic bottle. Like if you need it, okay. But whatever we cut back, that's something that won't go to landfill. It's something that we're doing to be more sustainable with our footprint. And so it makes a difference.
Coming from a very Indian middle class background, I come to think like, hey, yes, I'm in a place where I can say that, hey, you know what, I have a car. I'll carry my empty plastic jars to Carrefour in my car.
Yeah.
But then if somebody doesn't have a car, their supermarket's way far off. They have to use transport. Sure. And especially in Dubai, you see a lot of people doing that, traveling by public transport, living very far off, doing all their purchases at one go in like huge Lulus and Carrefours and big shops. And if that majority of population don't have the demand for these things, again, this kind of, and I feel like I'm coming back to the nihilism point because I'm trying to just justify around it. But do you, like, when I look at that, like a lot of these people, they don't have the opportunity to even think about it, right? So in that case, would you not say that there is a very systemic problem that's probably easier to fix? So for example, if I think about cars, for example, fossil fuel, extremely bad. Is the solution me cutting down driving the most efficient solution? Or is regulating companies to produce cars that, you know, burn more fuel the best efficient use of time? And I always go back to, it's easier to legislate 7 companies versus thousands and thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah. Why can't it be both? You know, and what's in your control? So that for me, like if I can't change the government and I can't change car companies and I can't change, at least like, okay, I've got time. Let me read the book on the bus. You know, let me not go all the way there. Let me carpool with that person. Like little things add up. And I'm not saying it's an all or nothing. Like, I mean, I don't want to carry all of my groceries around for a long day on the metro. But like if you have a backpack and you're just buying bananas, like, do you need to put that in a plastic bag and right? So it's just cutting back where we can. If we all do like those little choices just to be more mindful, that would make a massive difference across the world. Whereas if we all think the same way, like it doesn't matter, then we'll just be living in our own rubbish in, you know, like a couple of decades. So what world do you want for your kids?
Speaking of charities in general, right? Again, I'm more skeptical. I'm a very skeptical person. But,
let's hear it. I love the debate.
Me and Adi were just having a debate on, right? Do charities work? Right? And we see a lot of cases where people set up charities, but they throw a ball and all the funds are gone for the ball. And
oof, then that's a bad ball. That's a bad event. Yeah.
Right. So the accountability of charities is still like in large cases, it's not very transparent where the money goes. It's not transparent how the funds are being utilized. Is that a problem in this region? And how would you, being from that industry, solve that problem?
We are very lucky in the UAE because it is severely highly regulated. So not just anybody can be saying they're a charity when they're not. I'm very happy to jump through a lot of hoops and make sure that we report honestly and that the government gives us that stamp of approval, because then we can look at it and be like, we're good. What we're doing is good. And it's not, there's a lot of debates in the charity world about the best way to fundraise and is it right to pay salaries when it's charity? But I think, again, like it's the lives it changes and what happens if that charity doesn't exist. And I think the best, like you should be able to find a financial report if it's a good charity. You should be able to see that transparent information. You should, really. If you ask for it, they should be open book about it. But it is like, yeah, if that makes sense. Am I answering your question well? Like,
so in Dubai, what are the regulatory hoops that you have to jump through? Be a charity.
Of course. In Dubai, the Islamic Affairs and Charitable Activities Department kind of oversees everything. And under there's like the local charities, the ones run by the sheikh. There's the ones under nonprofit organizations, and you have under CDA the volunteer like communities and things like that. For us, we work with Golf for Good, which is a nonprofit organization. So I think it's rebranded to Dubai Humanitarian now. That body that rests under ICAD. So for every 3 months, we need to apply for a fundraising approval. So it means that we submit like our financial reports, our project plan, our marketing materials, who we're asking for money, the mechanism to collect it. That goes through Gulf for Good, Dubai Humanitarian, ICAD. And it's only when they think like, hey, this is in order, that they give us that approval. And then every 3 months we need to renew. So we're talking about how much we raised, what the charity project's up to, and keeping them very involved and active in the loop. And I know, so just like through Golf for Good and what we do, we have also the same measures with our charity projects. Because like I said, like I've seen bad examples, and we want to protect the money that people are giving to us. Yeah. So what we do is we ask for project applications and ask questions around like, what is the best way to use this money so it effectively helps kids for a long time? So the strategy we take, for example, we partnered with the Sparkle Foundation. Okay. They're a great project in Malawi. It's one that I always go to because it's a great example. They have 2 schools, about 300 kids in each school. And they came to us with the problem saying that their kids were too hungry to study. Like hungry kids can't learn. They just fall asleep in these things. And instead of us paying to feed the kids direct, food, sponsorship gone, eaten, done, the Sparkle Foundation had the idea to build a farmland so that they can grow crops to feed the kids on an ongoing basis and sell the extra at market so they get sustainable revenues to increase their work. So we set up these projects and then we give the funding in installments against receipts. And all of these, there's something that's publicly accessible. I'm happy to share with you any report, you tell me which month, I'll send it to you.
No,
yeah, but I hear you. It's something. Like anything, there's some criminals out there who take advantage.
It's just a problem of system. Like if there is something there are always bad apples for it, right?
Yeah. And sometimes like people learn, some like businesses fail, sometimes events fail. It happens, it sucks. But like good charities should do good work and good fundraisers. So I think it's not a reason to back away and not support. It's just a reason to do a little bit more research, to ask the right questions, and to give in the ways that make the most sense to you and your values.
That's a good transition into the next topic, right?
Okay, cool.
As a charitable foundation, how do you manage your funds? And we've read quite a bit about your experience with debt, your experience with money management.
I've been through it.
Right? When did you start handling money and how did it grow into the debt problem that you had?
So again, my incentive has always been fundraising for kids, which meant very often no salary, very little salary, and especially in the early days when it was like, I want to do good, I want the experience, like a lot of that was unpaid. And sorry if you hear me say this, I did make some wrong life choices in terms of trusting my partner too much. So we combined finances and there were irresponsibilities and me not having my own bank account. It landed me in a situation where I owed a lot of money through that relationship.
Okay.
So it set me back a long while. I've repaid it. I'm debt-free, very happy. And just working with charity, like I'm okay. I've got enough to pay rent. I've got enough to eat. I go to the occasional party, whatever. But I'm in the bottom of my soul. I am super okay that like I don't need a lot. I probably won't be able to afford a house, but as Thrift for Good grows and as things happen, like I'm learning to be smarter, to save every month and then use that money to work passively to bring more in time. So we'll see. If I never retire, it's okay. It's a life well lived. But it's probably not the smartest way to live, so I don't recommend it for everyone, but that's a personal choice, right?
And when did you notice these sort of red flags when you figured out, hey, I'm in a tight pickle when it comes to personal finances?
So I just do want to clarify, like now I'm good. I'm very responsible with my money because I've learned the lesson. I've learned save first. I've learned like keep your own finances, keep your money. Don't like trust too much and combine. Share, of course, work together, of course, but have your safety net. Don't spend everything that comes in. And I will never take a credit card again in my life because I think it's just like, it's too easy to get into a system of debt. And also like my staff, when they say they've taken Tabby and stuff, I'm just like, be careful.
Yeah. Because it's become so accessible, right? Like, you buy something and Tabby says, hey, pay in 4 installments. Pay in 4 installments. And at that moment, it doesn't feel like much. But then when they come collecting, then the late fees, that fee, this fee.
The interest, this, that.
It just, because previously to qualify for a credit card would be a process, right? Hey, you have to meet certain things. You have to have X amount of credit score. If it's a loan, it's even more stringent, right? You have to have an asset or you have to make sure your credit scores. X amount, whatever, right? But with Tabby, just like, you just like scroll
Yeah.
and it says like, hey, 4 easy installments. No, they clearly say no interest. And that's a big selling point. Like, I come from a Muslim background, we don't take interest, and that's an easy selling point. Hey, I see like zero interest. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Right? And not a lot of people understand the implications of how they come back at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's set up as a service, so there must be fees somewhere.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would they do it, right? And just to answer your question, I think for me, the turning point when I was looking at like not being able to afford the interest payments. You know what I mean? And like, how do you then dig yourself out of debt, right? Like when it just like keeps adding up and getting worse each month. Like we did get to a point where it's like, stop spending anything, sell everything we can, like, so, and then just working in our own separate trails to
A lot of people I've noticed, like they never end up digging out of it. I've seen like, especially in India, right? In India, where regulations are a lot more looser, right? All these buy now, pay later system. There are people like, committing suicide and all these situations because they just can't pay the situations, right? So
it's evil.
if and not just that, like, what they do is that there are certain companies, what they do is if you don't pay on time, they send a message to your relatives, families. And India,
we never got there.
And India, like almost every, like, you have a lot of relatives and relatives that you're in touch with. And it becomes like a socially unacceptable thing to owe debt and everything. And people mostly, go an extreme route, not because they can't afford to pay out of their debt, but mostly because they can't tolerate the embarrassment factor of it, right? So if somebody's in that situation, how do you dig out of it?
Again, like just slowly but surely. I know. Thank you, Mom. She gave me a loan to help me repay so I could get rid of the interest, and then I repaid her. So, I mean, like, I'm in my mid-30s. It's embarrassing to admit that, but in my 20s, when I was in this situation, I was so lucky to have that lifeline, that support. So I guess you'll find people who can give better advice. But for me, I think it's finding ways to reduce the interest rate and negotiate to have like maybe a longer term loan that you can afford, but you are religious with it and don't live beyond your means. So have your budget set up in front, like before you receive your salary, you should know like, okay, I'm putting this percentage into savings, this percentage is for groceries, and I love, like, I'm pretty old school. I take now my cash out, like my spending money for the month, and I divide it into my budget binder. So I know like, okay, I've got 400 dirhams left for groceries. Like I don't need this fancy thing. I'll get that next month if I still have money. Right?
Okay, that's
so smart budgeting.
Yeah, because like when you tap the card, right, you just like you get an SMS and it's gone, and you keep like zero track of it.
Exactly. And then the last week of the month, you're like, oh man, I don't have enough. Okay, I'll just take from my savings. No. It takes discipline. Yeah.
That's a valuable advice. And not just that, we've also noticed that you worked at a McDonald's.
Wow, you've done your research. Okay.
You worked at a McDonald's, which you used for the traveling and everything, right? What was it like working in a McDonald's?
Okay, so when I was 16, that was 20 years ago. It was a long time. That was my first job. I even forget how long I was there. I mean, they had good managers, a really like good system for training everything, and I did well, and it was an after school job. But actually, it's from working at McDonald's, I quit and I became vegetarian.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so it was like part of the journey of like, that's not what I want in my life.
Why was McDonald's the factor for you to moving into
vegetarianism? Yeah. So for me, like, I think at that stage, I was very compassionate towards animals. And then
wrong job too.
Yeah. And then to learn like about how much meat's coming through, and like it just kind of disgusted me. That I mean, yeah, I don't want to get in trouble. McDonald's, don't come for me. Nothing against you, but the meat, like, and the sheer volume of it, and the conditions. I don't know about McDonald's, but the conditions a lot of animals are coming from. Yeah. So it was just.
Plus, it's a global brand with so much supply chain. There's only so much.
Yeah.
They could also make sure, like, it's not going to be like the most organic products out there, right? Like, it is probably, they are. At the end of the day, they are a for-profit company that is going to cut corners.
Exactly. Right? And I didn't see the beef patty. I saw the cow, So it just like was like, I don't want this. And it works really now as I'm learning more. I think the best thing anyone can do to protect the environment is cut down the meat or get rid of the meat. So it works really well with my life. Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. And at present, you are a pescatarian?
Yes, I am. Okay.
So what was the transition from vegetarian to pescatarian.
Health
Okay.
was the reason that I compromised because I was like anemic and low iron, and a lot of people can do vegetarian correctly and well, but for me, time and knowledge, and it was a good compromise to take care of my health.
Yeah, because one of us, like she's not here today, but
Mm-hmm.
not her. She is a vegetarian,
Hey,
right? And
cool.
that's also because it's not religious or anything. It's just she loves animals and she's vegetarian for that. And one
Yeah.
of the biggest challenges she faces is the health related reasons, like she has to keep up with supplements,
Yeah.
iron problems are coming up, and
Yeah.
all these things. So, what was it like? How long were you vegetarian for?
So I've been vegetarian since I was 16, so 20 years. I have like there's special occasions where I'll eat if somebody cooks me meat and they're going to throw it if I
Okay.
don't eat it, Christmas, like there's certain occasions where I'll cheat a little bit. But yeah, for 20 years. And for me, like the health was the issue. I remember a time where it affected my memory and just like anemia, right? So, and I have gone in and out of that. I have so much respect for people that are 100%, but it just takes a little bit more organization, effort, just more planning.
And to move from vegetarian to eating fish now, was
Yeah.
it like a huge shift for you? Because
No.
No?
So I love sushi.
Okay.
I like fish. And I think it was pretty early on. Like in university, I was like, okay, something's got to give for me to be able to work effectively and be healthy. So, yeah.
Now, counter question,
Yes.
right? You spoke about how much plastic end up in the water, how it affects the fish, and you end up eating the fish, right? It feels like a small conflict of interest, right?
Yes, it is. And that's why I'm saying it's not all or nothing. I'm doing the best I can to cut back where I can, but like I
Ultimately a
also
human
live in
being.
Dubai, right? Like, so it's not all perfect.
And one last question, where do you source your fish from?
Oh, I usually shop at Carrefour.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't like I will buy salmon. So
Okay,
yeah,
seems fair.
and I choose organic if I can. I choose like wild if I can. It's not always. I do my best.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point.
I love these questions. Okay.
Um, where are the Thrift for good stores? How can people reach them? What are the opening times?
Yes, so we've got 2 locations right now. The first one is on the Palm Jumeirah, the Golden Mile Galleria Building 8.
Okay.
The residential buildings there. The second one is in Times Square Center up on the first floor, just next to Sheriff DG.
Okay.
And the third one we're opening in December, inshallah, is next to On Passive Metro Station.
Okay.
And that's going to be our sustainability hub, our biggest one yet, where we're also doing all the recycling and lots of group sorting and very exciting initiatives.
It's expensive real estates, right? Like
It is expensive, yes.
all the locations are
It's
pricey
yeah, and
places.
they're going up. So we won a grant from Visa. We won the She's Next award, and that's what's fueling our first year of rent in this warehouse. And I'm determined that it's going to work, so we can afford if we go. And I should probably mention, I feel like this will come up as a question if I don't answer it. So we donate 100% of our profits, but we budget on a 50-50 split.
Okay.
So 50% of our revenues is to cover rent, overheads, utilities, modest staff salaries, etc. And then 50% of our revenues, our profits, are for the kids.
Okay, so when I read it's 100% profits, I assumed it's like the net profits are going down.
Yeah.
So that takes into the operations and everything, and the net profit goes out.
Exactly.
So you're saying that from the gross, you're splitting it into 50-50?
That's how we do our budgeting, yeah.
Okay, so you pretty much have you know how much is going to be your net profit technically.
Yeah, I mean, now we're pretty good that we can estimate it very honestly. I mean, we're heading into a little bit of a stage of risk and uncertainty opening a new location. We can project it, but we're going to know in a few months exactly how it does. So I hope I don't have to make tough budget decisions, but we should be good.
But if you had to make a tough budget decision, where would it cut off?
Salaries, or we work harder to find sponsors. Like, I would love to find in-kind sponsorship for all of our expenses. I haven't found landlords yet that are willing to sponsor rent.
In Dubai?
Yeah, it's hard to game here. But utilities, like if anyone knows anyone at Diwa, Etisalat, that could take off a chunk of $6,000 a month salary, or even more sponsorship in terms of supplies. A lot of like the furniture, everything in this warehouse, we're doing donated pre-loved or upcycled. So we're using materials to build, and it should drastically reduce the costs. I think that's going to be my first turn to is look at the budget and what here can we turn to sponsorship? Who do I call? How do we do this? Worst case scenario, we're just going to have to trim and slim and see who doesn't need a salary.
Okay. Let's hope it doesn't come there.
Don't share this with my staff.
But thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming. It was a
Yeah.
pleasure talking to you. I'll give it a shot with the Thrift.
Come by. You're going to love it. You're going to find really great items. I promise.
Do you have like sneakers and shoes? And
Yes, we have great sneakers and shoes. Nike, like 50 dirhams. Really good.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm telling you, you're going to find treasure. I promise. Yeah.
because like I like shoes a lot. Like I like to buy the weird type of shoes. Like,
Cool.
So I have shoes with like smiley faces on them.
You're going to love thrift because that's the thing. Everything is so unique. It's not like you're going to find things that everybody's wearing. Each piece is new and different. And yeah.
You know what? I'm going to make a visit. Yeah, I'm
come
intrigued.
by. I'll be happy to see you there.
Sure. I'll probably visit the Times Square one. Parking's nice there.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
and that being said, again, like no pressure. Do what you can in your life. And even if it's giving us the clothes that you don't want anymore, that's amazing. If you'd rather come and volunteer, that's amazing. Like we want to offer lots of bite-sized pieces.
Good question now.
Yeah.
How do people volunteer? What does volunteering involve?
So if we had staff, again, cutting staff salaries, all these things, if we had staff for all of our activities, we wouldn't make profit. What we do behind the scenes is very labor intensive. So we rely on volunteers to sort our donations, to steam the clothes, sanitize them, make them look good, to price them, to put them out, the customer service. And we have volunteers, like the person who onboards volunteers is a volunteer. We have volunteers working on our finances and our marketing. And so we're as volunteer run as we possibly can be.
Do you think that becomes a problem down the line? Because like there's only so much commitment that can come from a volunteer versus somebody who's paid a full-time salary, right?
Yeah.
So how do you manage with that then?
We've evolved our structures to accommodate volunteers. So in the beginning, when we first opened, it was me and this lovely lady named Sarah, our retail manager for the beginning, who helped us get it off the road. And we were like, okay, we're going to find volunteers to run the shifts to keep the stores open. I love my volunteers, but they have every right to not come if they don't feel like it. So we just found that Sarah and I were each doing 40 hours a week in the store, plus everything that happens on top of that. So we very quickly shift the model to have like, okay, there's one paid staff member here at any time to take care of the volunteers, to engage, motivate, empower the volunteers. So that way, if nobody shows up, it's a harder shift for that team leader. Things won't get done, but at least the store remains open. We meet our legal obligations. We're still fundraising and active. So yeah, we've kind of like taken that into consideration.
Yeah, because like I would think that if I'm a general organization perspective, if I'm not paying somebody a full-time salary, it's kind of absurd of me to expect a full-time commitment, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to like especially if it's run on profits and if the profits have to go to charity and there's no profit, there's no charity sort of situation, and you're expecting volunteers to come in and pitch in.
Yeah.
At some point, you're going to find a inflection point where people are not going to be as involved, especially in Dubai where cost of living is expensive.
Yeah.
Traveling to the said locations are pretty difficult, right? Like Times Square Center is not an easy place to reach.
Palm
Palm
is even
Jumeirah is
harder.
completely not a great place to reach if you don't drive.
Yeah.
Right? So these things play into a factor. These things become a factor, and how do you retain the volunteers becomes a question, right?
We do our best. Retention is always something I want to improve, but I think people keep coming to us because it's such a great community. Nobody volunteers unless they've got a good heart, and the people, the network, everything you find in stores, it's pretty amazing. And we do, we give back. We give a small discount if they're volunteering. We organize socials and other activities. Our partners give discounts for our volunteers. And we have a new Volunteer of the Month program, and we try our best to recognize, reward, and engage. We also make it pretty flexible. So once somebody signs up to volunteer in our stores, like 2 hours, whenever you can, is enough, right? So people can just kind of drop in, go. Our most valuable volunteers will carve out 4 hours a week to come and reliantly help us. But really, it's open doors to anyone that gives back, and anyone can do it.
And how does one get started with volunteering?
Okay, so check out our website, thriftforgood.org. Go to the tab Volunteer, and then you'll see 2 options. If you're above 18 and want to take on kind of more regular shifts, don't let us invest in training you and disappear, then you can fill in a link to come and join. You'll do a 1-hour training session, and then it's free to join whenever you want. And if you're under 18, then at our events and our markets and things like that, we would love to have you there. So it's a WhatsApp group that can be joined.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer, for coming. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.